Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Full Potential Show. I'm James Rick, and this is your #1 non-boring source for personal development. Today on the line, we have Don Spini. He's the author of the #1 bestseller, 60 Seconds to Yes. Don personally conducts over 150 sales training sessions per year, making him the top sales coach in the nation. And Don's powerful yet simple methodology shows participants how to create extreme interest in their product, service, or ideas before they talk about their product, service, or ideas. So there's some interesting psychology going on here. Don is going to talk to us about how to get your prospect, your clients, or the people you're going to work with to yes in whatever it is that you're trying to influence them to do, within reason, within legal boundaries. Don, thank you so much for being on today's Full Potential Show.
Hey, James, thanks a lot for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. And you know, all it took me was 60 seconds to get you to say yes.
So you're already influential. You don't need this. It's perfect.
Let's talk about what inspired this. What is your background, Don?
Well, you know, the resume that most people don't know about is not the success I've had in sales, but the first 10 years where I was an abject failure. So the inspiration came out of desperation and need. You know, and I chose sales. I wanted to be in sales. But from 1985 to 95, a complete and abject failure. The problem, James, is I did what I was told to do. I took all the training. I did what I was told by the professionals, the top people. It just didn't work for me. So it took that 10 years of struggling to have that epiphany moment, if you will. That was the foundation of this book.
So you were in sales for 10 years. I mean, that was your role. You were a salesperson, and yet for 10 years you struggled with all the training and everything you got from these other organizations. And so you were working for 10 years doing sales for these other companies. What kind of sales were you doing, Don?
Financial services. I even sold a training program, a sales training program. Disaster. Obviously, just a disaster.
It just wasn't working. Well, what was it? What was the difference? When did it finally click, and what did you start doing differently?
You know, it's crazy, James, but you know, people talk about epiphany moments and divine intervention. It literally happened in a second at a grocery store in California. I was getting out of sales. I was going to go work for the government. I was done. I mean, 10 years, most people, smart people, would have quit a lot earlier. After 10 years, I threw in the white towel and said, it's over. I am not cut out. And a lot of people listening to this have heard this. I'm not cut out to be successful, not cut out for sales. So I did what I was told. It literally happened in an instant in a grocery store. And it's outlined in the book, and we talk about this at length in the program. But the epiphany moment I had is, for 10 years, I was studying the wrong people. I was studying the top salespeople, trainers, reading all the books, going to all the programs. I was learning how to cure disease by studying 100 doctors. And what I should have been studying is the patients or the buyers. So to summarize that epiphany moment, what I discovered in that grocery store, it's a funny story. We don't have time to go into it today, but for your viewers, the funny story is every human being on this planet, what I discovered at that moment, and I've taken 20 years to develop it into a manageable program and skill. Every human being on the planet has only two things in common. One, we're all humans. We're all the same species. Other than that, we're very unique. We have our own individual fingerprint, DNA fingerprint. The only other thing every human being has in common, and the only single thing we all have in common, we all make decisions the exact same way. And that, my friends, is everything in the sales process as we know it. And knowing that process, selling, and you know, I make this controversial statement, James. Last night I was at a big entrepreneurial event and 80 entrepreneurs, and I start my presentations with, selling doesn't work. You know, you hear a pin drop. And I say, sales training doesn't work. You can hear a double pin drop, like, aren't you in sales training? What's going on? James, there's no evidence that selling or sales training has ever worked. I'm not talking about anecdotally when you and I coach people in one-on-one. I'm talking about the industry as a whole. And the proof I submit, and I invest time submitting that proof, only 1% of salespeople ever become wealthy. You know, and whether you're a salesperson, a doctor, it doesn't matter. The 1% applies to sales professionals. So there's this insanity out there. People do what they think they're supposed to do, and they fail, and what's left? Blame yourself. That's not true. You have to understand that decision process. You have to know what the buyer's going through. It has nothing to do with us. It's not about personality. And look at the evidence. Look at introverts and extroverts. They're successful introverts. They're successful extroverts. The success doesn't measure you. There's no means to measure based on your personality. So when I say that everybody makes decisions, influential people know that process. That's what makes them influential, and they can affect the decision process in other people. So a long answer, but
no. Very important and very deep. What you're saying here is that you can study all the salespeople you want and all the sales techniques that you want, but once you really shift your focus from the sales process to the customer, to the person that you're selling to, this opens up a whole new world of discovery and effectiveness in sales. That's what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so now you made this big shift. So for 10 years, you're focused on what do I need to do as a salesperson, and for 10 years, you're trying to learn all the tricks of the trade. When you made this shift in your focus, what did you learn then? What suddenly started to happen?
What I learned is I had to get out of that process. I had to remove myself from their decision process. Because what I found, what I didn't know is that, and what sales training teaches people, is that we're taught this method called probing and presenting. What I didn't know is when I was doing that, and I thought I was doing that well, I was raising defenses in the buyer. So the bottom rung, to answer your question, I had to learn to get out of that process. It's a decision process. I had to help them navigate their decision process. If I'm going to affect it, I have to do it from over here. But whenever, and here's a key point for your viewers to understand, and again, I wish we had 10 hours to go through this. Whenever a seller or salesperson, whenever we move the buyer unnaturally through that process, anytime we push them forward or backwards, even slightly, they automatically raise their defenses. They have to. So
this is an important point, Don. I really want to emphasize this, because you could do the technique perfectly, but if you don't have the intuition of what's going on naturally in that flow of communication between you and somebody you're going to potentially work with, as soon as that defense mechanism fires off, that something's not right, I feel it in my gut, and that vibe is negative, no matter how well you execute it. In fact, a perfect execution could fire off that defense mechanism.
Absolutely.
So that shift is important, because you could be a perfect salesperson and not make any sales. So Don, tell me what you do differently now that you have that understanding.
Absolutely. So before I get to that, to nail down what you just said so eloquently, that's why for most people, when they're in a sales situation, even seasoned salespeople, it feels so unnatural for most people, and that contributes to the failure. They go over here in their life, James, which is so funny. They're totally influential in every other aspect of their life, in their families, church organizations, clubs, networking. They feel totally comfortable in those environments. When it's in front of a prospect and you're asking them to buy your product, it feels so unnatural. So both parties, it feels unnatural, because we are resisting the natural decision process. So what I have to do, what listeners and viewers have to do, is you have to know, this is critical, and it's so simple, yet when we're thinking about ourselves, we can't do this. You have to know where that buyer is in that decision process. And I'll summarize it real quick. It's a 3-step process. The decision process, as I've identified it and we identified in this program, 3 steps. It goes heart, brain, and gut. You can physically see what area the buyer is in that process if you're in tune to them. And I ask the people in the programs, do you think it's important to know where the buyer is in that process? It's everything. It's everything, but that's not what's going out there, James. What people are doing is they build, I sit down, hey, James, how you doing? Nice shirt, cute family, great picture. Let me talk about myself. And I wonder why you tell me no 99% of the time. If you don't know where that buyer is in that process, and you can physically see them, physically and hear them where they are, if you're not tracking with them, their defenses, they have to go up. It's natural.
So the first thing that I'm hearing you say, Don, is you have to be sensitive to the person that you're going to potentially work with. Where are they, as opposed to starting in and feeling like you're at a blank slate every time you go into a conversation with somebody.
That's right.
So be sensitive to them. And I think that just starts off on the right foot in the first place, because it's almost like I compare it with dating, right? I mean, if any part of it was unnatural, then it pretty much didn't end very well. It was more like when it was fluid and natural and you were paying attention to them and you gave them that room to be unique in their own way. You didn't just treat them like you treat everybody in that process. Like, oh, it's a new, fresh date. It's a new, fresh person that I'm interacting with. And now I'm going to run through the steps. Because I know that, like, when I was learning dating techniques, that's how I compare it with. It was like, it was hokey and unnatural until you just start paying attention and understand that everybody, like you said, everybody's human, but everybody is different, and you got to tune in to the differences, what makes them unique, to really be able to connect in a real, natural, and present sort of way.
Absolutely. And again, you think about, like you just said, an influence. We talk about this in the program. Influence is 24/7. That the skills and methodologies that we teach, you have to use them in all aspects of your life. And people freak out. I say to people, I go, the problem with sales and sales training, as we were all taught it, is you have to assume the person you're talking to has a predisposed interest in your product, service, or idea. You just got to get them to buy it from you. They took your call, they took your meeting. Okay, they may want or need it. I just got to get them to say yes to me. That's not true at all. We will never, ever become wealthy in sales only selling to people who already need our stuff. When I say you got to influence people, what that means, and this kind of freaks people out until we go into it, influence is the ability to get somebody who has already said no or has no interest in your product, your service, your idea. You get that person to say yes. That's influence. Remember, if you already agree with me, I don't need to influence you. And people start getting bristly and thinking, well, is that manipulation? I mean, no, not at all. You and I can instantly become interested or need or want something. That's called the decision process. Here's how it works. You and I are sitting at home, and our TV blows up, and now we go, shoot, I need a new TV. Super Bowl's coming up. Mm-hmm. You immediately went into the decision process. Something happened. Well, I can launch you into a decision process and find out if you need or want my product.
And now, what I'm hearing you say, Don, is in some instances, a person may not even know what their problem is, so they can't even know what they want. But when you go through the process with them, you can help discover things in them that maybe they didn't even realize were going on. You kind of touch on areas where they're like, gosh, I never even thought about that being a problem or being an issue. But now that you've brought it to the surface, I can see how your service or your product might be able to solve that problem. In other words, you reached inside them and showed them where there's a broken TV or something that's broken that needs a product or service that you offer. I mean, that's what you're saying, right? I mean, bottom line is they're not ever going to say yes unless they do have a need for what you offer, right?
Absolutely. And so the title is not just a cheesy title. An influential person will find that out in the first 60 seconds of that buy-sell encounter. We call it the buy-sell encounter. It's not just a name of a book. You can find out in the first 60 seconds if they're needing. You said a key component there, James. You said bring it to the surface. The decision process exists in the subconscious mind. Bring it to the surface is the exact terminology we need to use because, for me to find out if you need or want my stuff, you got all the stuff. I have all the stuff down in the subconscious mind. All this pain, all these problems that they can't see a solution. You cannot find a solution. Therefore, your subconscious mind keeps those things down. Unless it sees a solution, it doesn't bring them up to the surface. When it brings them up to the surface, that causes pain, that causes you and I to act. But because it's down there, it does not see a solution. In 60 seconds, an influential person can lift that lid up a little bit of that subconscious mind and launch you and I into our decision process. And they will physically see us go into our decision process. Now, the influential person knows there's something there. It's not done yet. Because I get you to say yes in 60 seconds doesn't mean it's going to stick. The controversy that we say, too, just is this. The decision to buy is made in the very beginning of the decision process. Just like in that example, I need or I want. Whenever I say I need or I want something, consciously, I've made the decision to buy. Now I have to go out and validate that decision. I have to find the product, service, or idea. That's not what we're taught. We're taught the decision to buy is made after my fancy closing. Not at all. Not at all.
And there's two basic assumptions that I want to point out here that I think are inherent in your process, and that is that the salesperson, whatever they're selling, they do have something of quality that does meet a very real, specific problem or need. And if you're not starting from that place, then you can't expect tools and tips and strategies for sales to do anything for you. You've got to believe that what you have to offer, and you've got to know in your heart that what you have to offer has real value for somebody. And now you're going to find those people that need it or could use it, but they don't even know that they want it. And in the 60 seconds, you're identifying that need or that want, and you're bringing it to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And your viewers are going to think, okay, well, how's that influence? Let me quickly define this so your viewers don't freak out. Influence is I get James Rick, who is not predisposed to want my product or service or idea. He's not predisposed.
I'm not actively looking for the answer, right?
No, but I get James to completely change his mind about something. Go 180 degrees and go the other way. And James comes up, he says, Don, oh my gosh, I would have never saw me doing that. Thank you so much. I am so glad I listened to you. I would have said no to this. I'm glad you stuck with me. That's called win-win. When the buyer wins first, that's what makes it influence. They have to win first. You have to solve a problem for them first. That's called influence, win-win. And I make that distinction, James, because the other side of that coin is this. I get James to change his mind about something. He's not predisposed to agree, but I get him to go 180 degrees and go the other way, and he regrets it. Why did I listen to Don?
That's manipulation. Yeah, you've got to have the
buyer's remorse.
You've got to have the best interest of the person that you're working with in mind. It brings to mind something I just saw in a movie recently, Don. If you haven't seen it, it's great. It's called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. This guy goes on this juicing tour across the country, and he stops into a truck stop, and he tells the guy he's on this juice thing. The guy used to be like a couple hundred pounds. He lost all this weight, and the trucker never even stopped to think about his health. He didn't even know the problem really. I mean, he knew it existed, but he wasn't really looking for the solution. Long story short, the guy who went on this tour and was doing this movie was able to change the mindset of this trucker who eventually joined him in doing this juice fast. That was the sale. That was the influence part of it that led to a better life for this person. And I hear that in the underlying theme of what you're saying, Don, is that you have the best interest at heart for this person, and you're bringing their problems to the surface, and you're solving those problems so that the resolution, even after the sale, is, gosh, I'm so thankful that you made me do something, or you caused me to do something. That's force. You made me do something that I wouldn't have otherwise done that is in my best interest. Thank you, brother. Thank you, sister. I appreciate the love and what you did for me.
Absolutely.
All right, Don.
What that does? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Don, before we wrap up, I know you've got a generous offer here. First 4 people to respond get a free copy of the book. How do they do that?
If they go to our website, 60 Seconds to Yes, just all spelled out, no punctuation, there's an information box. If they type in their name and email and then write down James Rick, Full Potential, the first 4 people will contact by email and we will send them a signed book.
Awesome.
So 60 seconds to yes, just real easy to find.
There you go. It's all spelled out, guys. It's 60secondstoyes.com. We'll put that up on the screen and in the description as well. Don, any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
I want to thank you. And for your listeners, what makes you different, what makes you influential, is you have to have in your mind the mindset that you have a moral obligation to help other people first. That's the whole secret, in my opinion, to success. Then when you have that moral obligation, you are no longer selling. Selling doesn't work, influence does. Hey, James, thank you very much. I really appreciate being on the show. It's great.
It really was great having you on, Don, and I think you've left them with such an important final thought, and that is that, sales has gotten a bad rap because generally it's confused with manipulation for the person who's doing the selling. But I think what you are saying here, and it's so important that people get this, and I say this again and again, when you are doing something that is going to aid evolution, is going to aid the development of people that you're serving, then it's in their natural best interest, and you've got to move them from a state of what hasn't been working to what is working, and you're part of the solution. When you're part of the solution, sales becomes easier, yet you need to learn things like what you're talking about, Don, how to get them to say yes to what's in their best interest. But if you offer something that is actually going to move them away from their best interest, then you could learn all the strategies in the world, and you might actually even convert a few people to your product or service, but you are, in the worst way, you're manipulating, and you're actually going to hurt your own chances of being successful, because I think nature has installed in us this filter to turn down and to avoid people who don't have our best interests in mind. So why make life harder on yourself than you
Right.
need to? Find something you can believe in. Find that moral principle that Don is talking about of doing what is in the best interest of others, and then learn the strategies of influence that are going to make them move on the track that has their best interest and their empowerment in mind. So in a long way, I'm really saying do what's best for people, and you're going to make your life a heck of a lot easier.
Amen.
Amen, Don. Thank you so much for being on today's show.
Thank you, James.
Take care. Well, that concludes this week's episode of The Full Potential Show, your number one non-boring source for personal development. I'm James Rick, and if you want to get more positive programming for your brain absolutely free on a weekly basis, just visit fullpotential.com.
If you like The Full Potential Show, you're going to love the Full Potential Club. What would you like most as a Full Potential Club member? Be 2 to 3 times more productive? Do what you're passionate about? Have more energy? Reduce your work hours? Travel the world? Enjoy an amazing lifestyle on a frugal budget? What if you could do them all? James Rick has been there and done it in ways that few people have. For anyone serious about taking their life or business to the next level, you know you've got to do more than just watch. You've got to do. Join James Rick and other like-minded people for an incredible $10 a month at fullpotential.com/club. Be educated. Be empowered. Be the best version of you. fullpotential.com/club. Try it free for 30 days.